On the streets of Los Angeles, Keanu Reeves approached a homeless man and bought him food. The man silently accepted the meal, but there was a different light in his eyes. A few days later, when Keanu learned this man's true identity, he experienced the biggest shock of his life. That man wasn't just homeless. Before we begin this story, please let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. And if you love true heroism stories, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we have another inspiring story for you tomorrow. The streets near Pershing Square Park in the heart of Los Angeles would quiet down during the night hours. Under the neon lights, the city's darker side would emerge. Homeless people would try to sleep on benches, while others simply wandered to get through the night. Everyone carried their own story on these streets, but most of the time these stories were never heard. Frank Williams was a 68-year-old man who had been living on these streets for the past 3 years. He was tall, thin, with gray hair. Deep lines marked his face, but his eyes still held a sparkle that showed he had once been a strong man. Every evening, he would sit on the same bench on 5th Street, watching people pass by. He always carried an old bag with him, and he valued this bag more than life itself. Frank's story was filled with hardships that most Americans couldn't even imagine. In 1970, when he was only 18 years old, he had been sent to Vietnam. He fought there for 2 years, lost friends, and was wounded himself. When he returned from the war, his country didn't welcome him. In those days, Vietnam veterans were seen not as heroes, but as troubled individuals. Frank struggled to find work. His family distanced themselves from him, and he gradually became disconnected from society. As the years passed, Frank battled PTSD. He couldn't sleep at night and lived in nightmares during the day. He started drinking, lost his job, lost his home. His wife left him. His children stopped talking to him. But Frank never complained, because he was a soldier who had fought for his country, and he hadn't lost his sense of honor. On this particular evening, Frank was sitting on his usual bench. Next to him was his old military bag containing a few photos from the war, his Purple Heart medal, and pieces of his old uniform. But he never showed these to anyone, because people saw that he was homeless and didn't care about his past. It was around 10 p.m. when Frank saw a man approaching from a distance. The man was tall, walked calmly, and was dressed modestly. Keanu Reeves had come out that night just to take a walk. The stress from his latest film was heavy, and he wanted to clear his head. Walking the streets of Los Angeles always gave him peace. When Keanu noticed the elderly man sitting on the bench, he stopped. Frank's posture had caught his attention. Most homeless people looked tired and defeated, but this man had a different bearing. He sat straight, head held high, eyes carefully scanning his surroundings, just like a soldier. Keanu approached Frank and politely greeted him. "Good evening," he said. Frank looked up and studied Keanu. The man's face seemed familiar, but he couldn't quite place him. "Good evening, young man," said Frank, with traces of military discipline in his voice. "Do you sit here often?" asked Keanu. "Yes," said Frank. "This is my place." Keanu noticed Frank's way of speaking. Proper English, respectful tone, clear pronunciation. This man wasn't just any homeless person. "Have you eaten?" asked Keanu. Frank was surprised. Most people avoided him or ignored him completely. "No," he said honestly. "Come, let me buy you a meal," said Keanu. Frank hesitated. "That's not necessary, young man. I can manage." "Please," said Keanu. "You'd be good company for conversation." Frank felt Keanu's sincerity. It had been a long time since anyone had spoken to him so kindly. "All right," he said as he stood up. They went to a nearby 24-hour diner. Keanu told Frank to choose whatever he wanted from the menu. Frank was modest and only wanted a simple sandwich. But Keanu insisted, and they ordered a more substantial meal. During the meal, Keanu began asking Frank questions. How long have you been living here? 3 years, said Frank. But don't worry. I'm used to these places. Why do you live here? Asked Keanu gently. Frank paused. He rarely could answer this question honestly. It's a long story, he said. I have time, said Keanu. Frank was moved by the sincerity in Keanu's eyes. I went to Vietnam, he said briefly. Keanu's expression changed. Are you a Vietnam veteran? Yes, said Frank. 1970 to 1972. How difficult was it? Asked Keanu. Frank's eyes misted over. The war was easy. The real difficulty was after coming back. Keanu listened carefully. Frank continued. When I returned, nobody wanted us. They saw us as killers, crazy, or troubled. I couldn't find work, couldn't get family support. PTSD? Asked Keanu with understanding. Yes, said Frank. For 40 years, I lived in nightmares every night. I started drinking, lost everything. Keanu was deeply moved as he listened to Frank's story. But you're still proud, he said. Frank was surprised. How do you know? Your posture, your speech, your bearing. You're still a soldier. Frank's eyes filled with tears. It had been a long time since anyone understood him this way. Thank you, he said. After the meal, Keanu walked Frank back to his bench. Can we meet again? He asked. Why would you want to? Asked Frank. Because your story matters, said Keanu. And you matter too. Frank still didn't know Keanu's name exactly, but he could tell this man was different. The next evening, Keanu came again. This time, he brought Frank coffee and a sandwich. They sat together and talked. Frank told about his experiences in Vietnam, the friends he lost, the hardships he endured. Keanu listened quietly and occasionally asked understanding questions. On the third day, Keanu asked Frank a question. Frank, if I wanted to help you, would you accept it? Frank looked suspicious. What kind of help? Housing, treatment, a new beginning, said Keanu. Who are you? Asked Frank. What stranger is this generous? Keanu smiled. My name is Keanu Reeves. Frank's eyes widened. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. I'm an actor, said Keanu. You might know me from the Matrix films. Frank's mouth fell open. You're the guy from Matrix? Yes, said Keanu humbly. Frank was shocked. For 3 days he had been talking to one of Hollywood's most famous actors, and the man hadn't acted superior at all. Why? Asked Frank. Why are you helping me? Because you're a hero, said Keanu, and heroes shouldn't be left alone. Frank's eyes teared up. I'm not a hero. I'm just an old man trying to survive. No, said Keanu firmly. You fought for your country. You're a Purple Heart Medal holder. Frank was surprised. How do you know? I saw inside your bag, said Keanu. It was open. Frank felt ashamed. That's in the past. No, said Keanu. That's your honor. And this honor should be recognized. Keanu presented Frank with a detailed plan. First, the housing issue would be resolved. Then PTSD treatment would begin. And finally, they would focus on building a proper life. Frank hesitated. Do I deserve this? You're the person who deserves this most, said Keanu. A week later, Frank was placed in a special Veterans Care Center in Los Angeles. Keanu covered all expenses but didn't tell anyone about it. Frank slept in a proper bed for the first time in 3 years. The treatment process was difficult. Frank had to face traumas he had suppressed for years. But psychologists and therapists were helping him. Keanu also visited regularly. A month later, Frank's transformation was remarkable. Thanks to regular nutrition, clean living, and treatment, he had become a completely different person. His military bearing had returned. The sparkle in his eyes had increased. One day, Keanu brought Frank a special gift. This is for you, he said, extending a small box. When Frank opened the box, he saw his Purple Heart medal in a framed display. Below it read, "Heroism never fades with time." Frank's eyes filled with tears. "Keanu, I don't know what to say." "Just wear it with pride," said Keanu. "Because you earned it." 3 months later, Frank left the care center. Keanu had arranged a small but clean apartment for him. For the first time in 3 years, Frank had his own keys. But Keanu's plan didn't end there. He introduced Frank to the local Veterans Association. There, he met other Vietnam veterans and shared his stories. Frank was no longer alone. Through the association, Frank began receiving veteran benefits. The salary he received was enough to cover his basic needs. Additionally, he started helping other homeless veterans. One day, Frank made a special offer to Keanu. "Keanu, I want to give you something too." "What?" asked Keanu. Frank took out a photograph from his old military bag. In the photo were young soldier Frank and his unit companions in Vietnam. "This is my most precious thing," said Frank. "But now it's yours, because you gave me a second life." Keanu took the photograph and looked at it carefully. "Frank, this is very precious. I can't take it." "Take it," said Frank. "And remember, true wealth isn't money. It's being human." 6 months later, Frank was living a completely different life. He was going to regular doctor checkups, receiving PTSD treatment, participating in social life. Most importantly, he felt valuable. Frank began volunteering at the Veterans Association. He would find homeless veterans and help them. He would tell his story and give hope. "If I could change at 68, anyone can change," he would say. Keanu continued to visit Frank regularly. They were no longer just helper and helped, but true friends. One day Frank asked Keanu, "Why did you help me? What's the real reason?" Keanu answered thoughtfully, "Because when I saw you that night, there was still honor in your eyes. You hadn't lost anything. You just needed to be reminded." "Reminded?" "Yes, reminded of who you are. You're a hero, Frank, and heroes shouldn't be forgotten." Frank's story was also featured in local media, but Keanu never mentioned his own role. He only focused on Frank's success. "He's the real hero," he told reporters. "I'm just someone who was in the right place at the right time." A year later, Frank had become assistant president of the Los Angeles Veterans Association. He had helped dozens of homeless veterans. His life had completely changed. On Frank's 69th birthday, Keanu gave him a special surprise. He had found the surviving members of his old unit and brought them together. After 40 years, the Vietnam veterans reunited. That night, Frank thanked Keanu. "You didn't just give me a home. You gave me back my identity. You never lost it," said Keanu. "You just needed a little help." Frank's transformation became a source of hope for other homeless veterans. Keanu quietly began helping other veterans too. But he never appeared in the media, never boasted. 2 years later, Frank opened his own small counseling office. He was providing psychological support to veterans, explaining their rights to them. Keanu came to the office opening and congratulated Frank. "I'm proud," said Keanu. "Me too," said Frank. "But what I'm most proud of is having a friend like you." Frank's story became a book. From Streets to Hope, a Vietnam veteran's story inspired thousands of people. Keanu wrote the foreword. "Frank Williams taught me what true heroism is. Being a hero isn't just being brave in war. It's surviving, standing up, and helping others." Frank did all of that. Today, Frank is 70 years old and still working actively. He has helped hundreds of homeless veterans in Los Angeles. His friendship with Keanu continues. Every year, they meet at the park where they first encountered each other. Frank says, "This bench changed my life." Keanu responds, "No, Frank, you changed your own life. I just opened the door." This story shows the power of kindness, the importance of second chances, and what true heroism means. Sometimes all we need is to feel that someone believes in us. Frank Williams no longer lives on the streets, but is a valuable member of society. And every day, he continues to help other Franks. Keanu Reeves didn't just buy food that night. He saved a life. But according to him, he was the one who was really saved, because the lessons he learned from Frank were worth more than money could buy. If this story touched you, don't forget to follow our channel. In the comments, share how you treat people you encounter on the street, because every person has a story, and sometimes that story is much more valuable than we think.